zoning and planning, and he has a development agreement with the city. He actually allowed the sewer to come through his property. But then when he got to council, Dr. Rocha pulled it at the last minute and said, we're not gonna support it. It just so happens that she is also on the board of the San Antonio Housing Trust Foundation, which is a competitor to probably the person doing this over here. And they were looking at a tract here on Sarsamora. No reason, she just pulled it, and the only reason you can find is that it's gonna be multifamily housing inside of now the 2 mile line, but at the time still the 3 mile line, and it still exists that way. So he met with the city in September, talked to him, and they said, well, no, we can't do anything. He said, well, I'm gonna sue you. And they said, are you threatening us? He said, no. And so in December, he sued them. About November or so, something called the Texas A&M Land Plan, a regional center plan, kind of what was going on last night, popped back up. It'd been dormant for 3.5 years, and they started in 2018. All of a sudden, they brought it back up, and in that was the language out of the Starbright agreement, talked about 2 mile, 3 mile buffer, all to protect Toyota. The city they do deny that the Starbright influenced the Texas A&M land plan. But from the city's own website of this land plan back in 2019, there are 6 evidences where it clearly says the people meeting say we have to take into consideration this. They don't say Starbright, but the buffers and the distance and the restrictions created to protect Toyota. So it's all out there. That's where it comes from. So in the Texas A&M plan, it's languages in there. And then the new in the ICOD, which is what they brought us commission, had the same language. 1 and 2 mile buffer zones, no residential, only light industrial. And their plan was to make this whole 2 mile area with the green line all industrial with no residential. The 19,000 acres of industrial land. That's more than all the industrial land in all of San Antonio with existing buildings combined, probably by 50%. Yeah. And they take a 2 mile line from all of Toyota's boundaries all the way over here into the rail line, so across 281. And I only have so much time, so I'm trying to get to it. But essentially, when they came to us in zoning, I started looking into it. I discovered the Starbright agreement, found out a lot of information from talking to people. I wrote a letter to council, showed up at the next zoning meeting, and I'd already written a letter to the council, and I sent it to all the zoning commissioners, said, here's information I found. We need to look at this. City attorney came to me, tried to make me recuse myself, said I was trying to influence other commissioners, and they were mad that I'd written council. Like, well, why? They were mad that we caught them at it. They were attempting to get us to just automatically approve this. Yeah. And the next day, what they had, which they didn't have to give public notice about, and there were 140 people that showed up initially at the hearing. The next day, they had the planning commission scheduled to approve the Texas A&M land plan resolution, but they didn't tell anybody. And planning commission doesn't normally give notice to anything going on really, other than basic stuff. It was a 2-liner, and I asked a couple people, I said, are you aware of what's happening? They said, no. We went and we ended up getting 3 delays at planning commission, finally got them to remove the language out of there about the overlays and mileage outside of the Texas A&M plan, which is about 10,000 acres right there in the middle. But the city deceptively used that as the plan in the study area, and they engaged people, and there's a whole list of people in here that were engaged and participated. There are only 2 residents in the whole thing that had participated in it. Everything else was outside planning, lists of council, et cetera. But what they tried to do was use this to do this overlay as another layer. And if you don't understand planning, regional plan means that if you wanna do something different than what the regional plan says, you have to go back to planning commission and get a major plan amendment to get that major plan amendment changed to allow that specific use. So the city was going to do planning commission approval, get it approved by council in June, and they were gonna then have this ICOD zoning on top of it, so they got a double layer to crush any development other than industrial. But then they say, unless you have the same zoning on the top and the bottom, you can't even do industrial. So everybody was gonna be relegated to whatever they're doing right now, quote, grandfathered, for non-conforming use. And then they would promise people they could get non-conforming rights, but that meant you had to hire lawyers, engineers, spend a lot of money, and then it only lasted for 5 years. That's if you actually got started on something. So, and most of the impact is to rural farm, small mom and pops, not sophisticated necessarily, not having knowledge of things. And I'm gonna just kind of, I'm giving you some information. I don't want to talk all day long, and I'm not here to do that. But I'm trying to make an awareness of this. We're continuing to press the city, press council, press the zoning, press, and the planning commission thing is somewhat resolved. But I have a map here also that I'm gonna go to the city, and we're trying to say, look, here's a reduction of a realistic area that might, quote, protect Toyota. One thing that is down here is all floodplain and city-owned parkland. So Toyota has natural buffers down here. This is all zoned industrial all out here, as you can see from that pink color. There's lakes, floodplains. So Toyota's naturally protected. So a lot of this is irrelevant, but they're caught in this deal, and now it's coming to light and getting exposed. There's been multiple newspaper articles. Their TV's starting to get involved in this and starting to pursue it. And there should be a lot of media probably next week at our 6 o'clock hearing. And I'm enemy number one amongst the city lawyers right now, and I think probably the council's tired of my letters, because I probably send a letter every other day with information and writing and explanations, but I also send it out to probably 300-400 people at a time. If they said, they've taken me to the Attorney General. I've asked for emails so we can even, and back up, so the zoning commission can even make reasonable decisions and understand all this. They've refused to give it to me, so I'm gonna actually probably ask for another postponement next week, because they're withholding pertinent information for the zoning commissioners to even consider. They don't want us to have it. And I know they're afraid of the emails that are out there and the correspondence that will further show what has gone on in giving Toyota massive influence over this over a long period of time. And it's a little rambled, but if I tried to stay too much to my all of this stuff, I'd be here for 2 hours talking to you.
John, real
Yes.
quick, is Starbright synonymous with overlay? I mean, they're the same thing?
Yeah, the Starbright has language. There's 2 paragraphs in there, paragraph 24 and 29. And paragraph 24 is the one, and it's in this stuff in here. You'll find in there, and it's basically where it says Toyota's got the right to have a representative. All this stuff has to be per Toyota's approval. That the city would institute zoning in the very beginning, which they did. And then it also said that they would put an overlay with that 3-mile buffer.
Okay, and for my benefit and everybody else here, an overlay is like a master plan? Is that what that is?
Basically, in this case, it's a down zoning. There's 20 overlays in San Antonio, I think, or 18. Airport hazard, historic district, a lot of things that are more enhancements of what's there, or landscape buffers or some things along those lines. A template, but they're not taking away your rights necessarily. They're saying, well, you've got your rights, but you're gonna have to do some other things, or you have to go to historic district, or it's a airport hazard, so you can only build 12 stories instead of 20. Nothing like this one that just literally takes away every potential for anybody. And then again, if you're, the new zoning they're putting on the top, if it doesn't match the underlying zoning, you can't, you're stuck with what you've got and that's it. They are also attempting, this area over here and here are in the county. They're attempting to dump these lines in the county that are future annexation or annexation agreements to, the minute they come in to the city, they're gonna be subject to this zoning. That's the only reason they ran that line, and plus they were lazy. They didn't want to spend time.
So what does this do to the value of the landowners and who's representing them?
Well, nobody's representing them other than, I guess, I'm fighting for it, and I've got other people now participating in it as the, you know, it's out there. In theory, it will greatly impact their marketability,
Negative.
impact their value. I mean, especially some people that here that's done industrial, and they can't sell it, their houses, they can't sell it for what, a house. It's
They
probably
can't
not
build.
industrial demand, there's so much industrial land, how are they gonna ever fill it up? So it's almost, it's like a taking, but no compensation, and that's what we're arguing for. If you wanna protect Toyota, go buy up the land that you think is important to protect Toyota, or buy conservation easements for people. And that's kind of what the reason for my map, to shrink it down and say, here's some realistic areas that you might consider.
So is this all council 10?
What?
Is this all in
Oh, no,
District
this
10?
is council 3 and 4. Most of it is
Three and four.
District 3.
It's on the south side.
And we have gotten, recently, there have been, John Lujan, who's a state representative down here, Patrick, and I got a meeting with him. He lives within, he didn't know it. He was looking at some land over here in the 2 mile zone, and he said, well, I'm not gonna buy it now. He had no idea. And so he wrote I have a copy of something that he wrote a letter to council last week before the meeting, and he spent 4.5 hours down there and watched the control and the deception and the twist that they did.
Personal now.
Yes.
John, you say, among the various defects of this thing, you say that beginning, some odd years ago, city council approved it, but did they pass the ordinance? And if
Mhm.
they did, would you
Yes.
say it was not filed?
There's an ordinance number, and it says Project Starbright ordinance. There's a number, and there's the council resolution that's there, signed, and the document, Starbright agreement, is fully signed by the city, the state of Texas, everybody. But the meat of it, which is the economic part and then the zoning part, has never been filed in record. It only came out, and I believe it was Manny who released it, because he was Toyota's attorney. He released it last year. Now that he's running for mayor, you know, it's out.
What kind of communication initially took place to the residents of these buffer zones? Any?
Well, when they did that land plan, the Texas A&M regional plan, it affected 19,000 acres, but they only communicated to the people within inside.
So these people, like John, don't have a clue.
They had no idea about the regional land plan. Now, on the zoning requires the city to send out notices. They sent out 13,000 mailers to about 3,000, there's somewhere between 3,000 to 4,000 property owners in here. And there's a lot of residential up here. The city claims that they're doing this to protect residential from dangers of all this, you know, JCB. The city allowed Navistar to move in over here on industrial land right next door to existing residential. So their arguments are irrelevant, but that's what they say because it sounds good.
We both have questions and then.
Go ahead, go for it. I was just gonna say that, it sounds like Toyota, you know, obviously they negotiated a deal and maybe the city should have, you know, held up the bargain and didn't really do a good job at communicating. They probably
Exactly.
Hit it the whole time. So we're not necessarily, against Toyota having a contract, we're against people lying and cheating its way through.
We're not communicating.
And now
What's the real meat of the
And
deal?
what's happened now is the city's trying to cover themselves.
Right.
And they didn't do it, not the current administration, but somebody 20 years ago. But what's also happening is, and we're all seeing staff members essentially being forced to lie.
Yeah.
To cover up. And they wrote in both planning and zoning, this site and this site came to, and this is owned by the city. They bought this site up here for the San Antonio Housing Trust in December. They bought it without zoning and planning approved, but they believed, they already had it on the schedule at that time. They were gonna get approvals in May and council in June. And so what happened when all this blew up, it didn't get the approvals. So staff recommended they turn down the city's own site for approval, both planning and zoning, while turning down this site for planning and zoning to be consistent. It ended up, planning, I went in and spoke in favor of both of them. Planning approved it, zoning approved this one and planning. They pulled it temporarily up here. I think they're waiting for resolution here because they're still in the 3 mile, Toyota still has 3 mile influence. So the city was hoping with the 2 mile, the 3 mile would go away. So now the city's in a bad spot. They spent a lot of money, and that was by 5 council members who are on the board. So, you know, they made bad decisions with city money and trust money, and they don't even have, now fortunately, the planning commission and the zoning commission saw through the staff's bad support for denial. And I had one zoning commissioner said, I've been on here 6 years. He said, I've never seen such bad reasoning by staff members to deny things. And so it's unfortunate it's being pushed down on the employees who have no choice. They want to keep their job to do this.
Welcome to Washington.
Question down here?
Yes.
Can I get a couple minutes with you after we're done?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
to give the rest of the time, I'm happy to
Go
talk.
ahead, you can ask a question.
separately.
No, because it's, I'd rather just give it directly.
So John, is the Starbright agreement actually still, is filed with the city yet? Is it an official document yet?
Other than the fact I'm sending it out as much as I can, it's gone out, and then everybody in the media probably has it, full copies of the Starbright. Every council member now has it if they've never seen it. Mark White had never, he had no idea of all this stuff. When I first brought it up to him, it's like, what?
Does
Yeah.
Commissioners Court have any input?
I've sent stuff, you mean like, county?
Yes.
Well, they signed off on the Starbright too. I've sent it to them, they've ignored it. I mean, you know, they're all, they wanted Toyota, but, you know, they did this recent deal. I found something in May where Toyota had already applied for expansion of the air quality permit before the city ever committed the money. They had their plans done long in advance. All that was to get money out of the city by saying, we're thinking about coming here. They knew they were coming here.
You know what's really interesting that hasn't come out in this? That plant was purposely built to have 2 plants within one footprint. So when they built the pad, and that's what I want to talk with you about, when they built that plant, that was supposed to be an inclusive plant. It wasn't supposed to be anybody outside the plant that had.
They
anything
want them
to
all
do-
inside the boundaries.
They wanted them all within the boundaries, and now the money that they just went after, they're now saying, oh, well, we've been producing parts of the tundra off property, we now wanna bring it in. Well, that was part of your original statement to the city, was to bring everything inclusive, but also to be able to build like a minivan or something right next door. You know, so you basically have the 2 plants in one.
So
They
they
played the
be
city.
Toyota?
They being Toyota.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you go back, and that's what I wanna encourage you, if you go back to some of the original notes, the way that the city councilman, because I was part of the team that was gonna try to buy the San Antonio Speedway, that was right there at,
Yeah.
the Hops.
16.
Right, right.
Yeah,
There.
yeah, Highway 16.
Went Watson and 16.
Not Fisher.
It's Watson Road.
Watson Road. I was part of the team that was gonna look at buying that, and the city councilman met with us and said, oh yeah, I support you guys, blah, 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 Toyota is gonna be Toyota, they'll never, you know, be over here and all that stuff. It's been that way, but ultimately it was a family that ended up wanting more and more money for the property. You
They
know,
didn't tell you Toyota's all the way out here.
They didn't tell us that
Yeah.
back then.
What actions do you want us to take before you?
I think right now it's just to drop it. I mean, for one thing, it's already, all the land's already zoned. So why would you need a zoning overlay on top of, and mostly industrial zoning? Somebody still had, so they're already protected. Why do you need this? There's no point, and I think that's where
What
some
do
of
you
the
want
other,
us to do?
tell the council to just drop the, I can't,
City council?
yeah, tell the council to drop the ICOD. They haven't, it hasn't got to them yet. I'm hoping to kill it, but even if we kill it in zoning, it can go to council, and that's what they tried to do on the planning. when the city attorney stood up and told us, I don't care what y'all
We can
said.
speak to the zoning commission, will it be receiving this initiative anytime soon?
This coming Tuesday is, we are given the opportunity. Yeah, I don't know if we'll get to vote to it. I have so many questions. I can be there all night long, questioning Rudy Nino, who is the spin guy that they have. He stepped in to take over from the people in charge of these different things because they were stuck not being able to answer questions. He's in there not answering them, but partially, partial truth, and then he goes off. So he's the constant spokesman now to spin the story.
I'm gonna add, Jack, I was gonna add that this is a narrative that we as, Christians and conservatives and people that believe that it shouldn't be that way. There's a lot of people down there we should be talking to somehow. That's our next action, is like, there's churches down there, there's humans down there that need to be engaged. And they need to be engaged in wherever we are in the city, cause guess what? None of us live there.
Yeah, I don't, and
Right there, we got one. One of us live there, so we need to do whatever we can to help those guys, kick through this, cause they're not gonna be able to do it on their own.
And my argument has been that cities try to say, you can't speak out, or you're violating ethics. And
Right,
things.
right.
I'm
No,
like,
you gotta
no,
punch in.
I would never speak out if any of you brought a case to us. This is not you, this is the city.
Right?
That's all, that's.
It's changing narrative.
Yeah, it's them trying to jam bad stuff on people unfairly.
Win some elections.
And
Now,
so.
now the problem is, they're trying to downzone this, and they can go anywhere in the county and do it. They don't know what's
They
ahead.
wanna use
100%
this
right there,
ICOD
right there.
to move it in other places in town.
100%.
That's
He was
right.
gonna do it with the Right. DAs.
They told us that, so.
Sorry, don't get me started.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to, I wanna let Clayton and others talk, but I'm happy to
One more
talk,
thing.
yes.
Clayton, we need you. My friend Hino was out there when they opened the plan or whatever, he was on zoning.
Uh-huh.
He was on zoning.
Yeah.
He was told by the family representation, he talked to them behind the scenes out there, that they were coming here no matter what we gave them, that we gave them the farm.
Yeah.
And that they were gonna come here either way.
Right.
But what I'm saying along those lines, have we contacted the family and told the family, the Toyota family, what a shameful thing they're doing?
They're starting to get the
China.
message. John Lujan had
Yeah.
a call with them last week. He called them up and with the president here locally and 3 others. He said they're concerned about the black eye they're getting, and I'm like, well, everybody's blaming Toyota. It's the city's fault,
Yes.
but
Yes.
Toyota is gonna get.
The Japanese have a thing about honor.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yes, they do.
And they were not very happy with what the city had given them. It was too much.
So basically, it needs more exposure.
Right.
And,
They haven't been.
just to,
It wins itself. Oh, yeah.
yes.
So John, has the science been completed? Is the city using science that has been completed on the natural boundaries that have been created, plus the industrial zoning? Have they used any of that, or is it just arbitrary
We have
in
pushed
decision
them on
making?
it. I think what's gonna happen next week, they're gonna come back to us and they're gonna say, look, we've listened to the public, which is what they did on the planning commission.
Yeah, right,
And here's our
every time.
proposal. It'll be a watered down, vague thing that they'll still be able to use. And I think, from my perspective, no deal at all. But I'll wait and see. I'm gonna send them my map. I don't care how it gets done.
Amen.
And,
You don't think council would vote on this? Up?
They're not gonna black eye themselves.
I think either, who knows? I mean,
I don't trust them
so
to not vote for
the
it.
feeling I get is that, and I think even Council, Viagran has said, and she told somebody, and I think Rocha also said, maybe we should just drop this and deal with zoning individually. And that's the bottom line.
Amen.
You know, stop trying to pay for land on the backs of innocent property owners. They have a new project called Project Marvel. It's about the Spurs Arena downtown. And it's a $3 or $4 billion thing.
Yeah.
And Adriana Rocha said, we don't have the money to buy these people out. But they got the money to spend billions possibly downtown. but they can't do it down here.
In that article, that TV interview last night, they said who's gonna pay for it? Well, aren't they smart enough to know that we pay for everything?
John, if you
Yes,
would,
they
for
are.
the benefit of the viewers of the video, would you summarize what the city is trying to do and why they're going to this extent to create an overlay over already existing zoning?
Well, what they're trying to do is cover up for their Starbright agreement, which was done 20 years ago, which was an illegal contract zoning agreement. It was an economic agreement, but it also had the paragraphs in there that it turns out that it's contract zoning, which they can't do. And they have a lawsuit going on right now that they would lose, I believe, from what I've read. So they're trying to stall that and solve that problem of future people trying to sue them and follow the Starbright agreement. They wanna implement this overlay, and then they can probably just remove those paragraphs from the Starbright agreement. The Starbright agreement will stay because it is a contract. And the solution is just to jam this through zoning and then stop all residential development within a 2-mile zone of the plant or over 20,000 acres.
And what would the purpose of that be?
What?
What would the purpose of that be, to stop the residential
Well,
development?
just to comply with the Starbright that Toyota said they didn't want, or we promised them we would not allow any residential development to occur within 2 miles, or originally 3 miles of their plant.
So they're trying to prevent a huge black eye at the end of the day.
Well, yeah, the black eye now is the city's not gonna stick to their contract that they signed, yeah. So is that gonna impact them with future companies coming to here?
JCB, I was just gonna ask, would JCB?
Well, why wouldn't you have made the 2 mile then from JCB or from Avistar? So it never ends.
So John, is it fair to say that Toyota did this so they could cover their own rear end, so they don't get sued by residents that are too close to the plant and whatever the case might be?
In California, they've got houses right up next to their plant.
Do they?
Toyota was obsessive. When they came here, they said, we're gonna build the cleanest plant. So, and you know,
So that's the motive.
the
Cleanest plant.
winds blow this way. So these people down here aren't gonna get any impact. And then all this is industrial up here. It's a promise made, it's a contract, and now it's out there and the city's probably embarrassed. They are trying to solve it. This guy sued him, but he dropped the lawsuit. He's not suing them for money. He's just suing them to build his apartments. But, it's like two warriors. Neither one of them is gonna give up and,
The one that's wrong.
John,
but, yes, sir.
would it be fair to say that, the city basically took away the landowner rights of about 3,000 people illegally?
Absolutely. Well, they're trying to. They haven't yet.
But without communication.
Without communication,
Right.
yeah, without notice.
That already took place, or didn't take place.
Yeah,
That plays in the news.
yes,
Yes, as I was saying.
yeah. It's a taking without compensation. And it's a people who, are probably only busy in their lives and not informed.
So
Right.
last question, John,
Yes.
is, in our conversation we have with State Rep John Lujan, we talked about a way for a win-win-win situation here. What's that win-win-win situation
Well, I
here?
think the win-win was my map that's over there, where I've worked with some engineers to shrink it down, to follow more logical lines, either roads, or, yes, the one there with the black line. It comes out to about 14,000 acres, but most of the area is land that's already zoned industrial, so we followed this Highway 16. We followed 281, but then brought it back and cut out there was no reason to overlay over existing residential subdivisions, but it was gonna put a problem if their house ever burned in the middle of a subdivision, you couldn't rebuild. The city just did what was lazy, pushed a button and ended up with a 2-mile radius, never looking at what was there. Was Toyota naturally protected by all of this? Is there existing zoning that's already necessary? So this would just add bureaucratic cost, money, everything to anybody trying to do anything down there, and probably shut down any future development. What developer would ever touch this area, outside of industrial? And again, there's more industrial land than exists in the whole city of San Antonio, down there right now, zoning wise, or at least under that proposal. Even now, there's 10,000 acres of zoned industrial land.
With the exception of this, Toyota's been a good corporate citizen. They're being given a black eye. If they did what we think the city would back
Well, I
away.
think they can go to the city and say, hey, we've looked at this seems reasonable. Maybe there is some land over here that's, they think's problematic, or up here. Have the city go raise some money and buy people out or pay conservation easements, let them stay. And they would be aware that they can't ever do anything with it, or it's for 20 years or 25 years. But the fears of, the city uses health, safety, welfare. They even tried to say, what if Toyota leaves and a bad actor comes in and all of a sudden has all kinds of bad stuff causing harm to everybody? Well, number one, would the city allow a bad operator to
Sounds like
come
the
in there?
deceiver talking.
It is, and that's Rudy Nino. That's his job.
So next meetings, zoning commission meeting.
It's Tuesday, July 16th at 6 o'clock down at Development Services, where this issue will be discussed, and the city will be wanting the zoning commission to vote for approval, or some form. I don't know what they're gonna propose. Today's the last day for notice officially. I don't think they're gonna give us anything until.
Can citizens speak up at that meeting?
Absolutely, and if you
So
can't
that's what
make
you
it,
encourage people to do.
if you can't make it, you need to call and just leave a message.
Where do they call?
Call to the Development Services Department. You call down there and ask them for the phone number for zoning, and there's a recording that you will leave, and you can talk up to 3 minutes. I would say 2 minutes, because if there's a lot of calls, they're gonna shrink it. So
Leave a 2-minute voicemail.
no more than a 2-minute
And
voicemail.
what's the name of this meeting?
It's the zoning commission.
Zoning
meeting.
commission, okay.
But
You
case
just-
number.
Just scroll the zoning commission.
I haven't seen the
website.
case number. Well,
Okay,
it
that's
is a,
not what you gotta say,
it is a
right?
continuation, but you can get it by just calling them.
That meeting is moved to the evening, is it not?
Yes, it's evening, 6
Do they
o'clock.
refer to it as Starbright, or do they refer to it
No,
overlay?
it's ICOD,
ICOD,
Industrial Compatibility Overlay District.
ICOD, so when you call.
All right, rock and roll.
Very good. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
But
That was very, very
like I said, I'll
good.